This re-examination of the card diagram begins with Russell's Cards Actual diagram, in which the three scales of the centers, parts of centers, and parts of centers are shown as the three stories of a human being, stacked one above another. See pages 48 and 49 in Cosmic Secrets, so that their notes align. The six tallest cards, located on the inner notes of an octave in scale 0, are the aces and jokers, and represent the six centers of function of a human being: the instinctive, the ace of diamonds; moving, the ace of clubs; emotional, the ace of hearts; intellectual, the ace of spades; higher emotional, the extra joker; and higher mental, the joker. The 18 middle-sized cards between them, the face cards, jokers, and aces, represent the three parts of each of the six centers. The parts operate with automatic or mechanical attention, drawn attention, or directed attention, respectively. They are located on the inner notes of the three octaves in scale 1. These three octaves constitute the three stories of human psychology. Finally, the smallest cards, the full deck of 54 cards in scale 2, are placed between the mid-size scale 1 cards to represent the parts of centers, consisting of the inner notes of the 9 octaves in scale 2. These cards indicate that these parts also operate with gradations of mechanical, drawn, and directed attention. What is most clear when the three stories are stacked in this way is that in the bottom 2 stories, all of the red cards, representing the essence or given centers, are now on the left side of the diagram, and all of the black cards, representing the personality or acquired centers, are on the right. Each story has both an essence center and a personality center, but the card colors are mixed in the top story, which unifies both the given and acquired lower centers. Then, the three stories unstack to form a single scale 0 octave, with the scale 1 and scale 2 cards still located between the large scale 0 cards. The entire scale 0 octave is now in one line, but the cards are not spaced according to their frequency. The notes of the scale 0 octave appear below the cards, now spaced to scale according to frequency. Below them appear the notes of the 3 scale 1 octaves, also to scale, with a graphic showing the ranges of the 2 scale 1 oscillating does and their oscillations. This graphic symbol of 3 octaves, introduced in the dualities animation, shows the ranges from bottom do to top do of the 2 oscillating scale 1 does, which are directly below the notes mi and so of the scale 0 octave, at the centers of the sine waves. The oscillations of these oscillating does are shown as the green, minor, and blue, major sine waves, each going from far to far. The range of the oscillating do of the minor oscillation is shown as a red arrow, and the range of the oscillating do of the major oscillation is shown as a hollow black arrow. Now, the card's actual diagram disappears, and the 9 scale 2 and 27 scale 3 octaves appear, with the ranges and oscillations of their oscillating does all shown to scale by frequency. Although the scale 2 and scale 3 octaves are added without note labels, we can still see where most of the notes are located in each graphic, which always represents a set of 3 octaves. The bottom do is always at the left end of a red arrow. There is always a fa at the left end of the green sine wave. The lower oscillating do is at the center of the minor oscillation in green, directly below a mi in the scale above, and also at the left end of the black arrow. A fa divides the oscillations from each other, always directly below a fa in the scale above. The upper oscillating do is at the center of the major oscillation in blue, and at the right end of the red arrow, and under the so of the scale above. There is a fa at the right end of the blue sine wave, directly below the la of the scale above, and T is 5/8 of the way from the right end of the blue sine wave to the top do, which is at the right end of the black arrow. Scale 0 and scale 3 disappear for now, and the card labels and the legend of centers and their parts fade in. The legend describes the centers of a human being, their parts, and their parts of parts, but now on a to scale diagram. The 6 centers of function in human beings are still located on the 6 inner notes of the scale 0 octave. The 3 parts of these 6 centers, 18 cards, fall on the inner notes of the 3 scale 1 inner octaves. And finally, the 54 cards of the full deck are located on the inner notes of the bottom 9 scale 2 inner octaves, representing the parts of centers. This diagram shows the sequence of the centers in scale 0 and how they align with the notes of an enneagram. This helps one understand that each note is associated with the center aligned with it and acquires that flavor. In scale 1, we see how each of the 6 centers is in turn composed of 3 parts: a mechanical, an emotional, and an intellectual part. The jacks, queens, and kings represent those parts in the lower 4 centers, and the aces and jokers represent the parts of the higher 2 centers. In scale 2, each part of a center is likewise shown to be composed of a mechanical, an emotional, and an intellectual part. But Russell realized that there were 2 difficulties with this original card diagram. Firstly, each center has a somewhat independent existence, and things which come into being in this world of time and space are best represented by oscillations, which are spaces, rather than by notes at single points. They owe their existence to being bound together in webs of harmonic stability. Secondly, if this chart is to represent an ascending octave in time, the elements at the lowest frequency should be the simplest. For instance, the frequency of the Jack of Diamonds, which represents only the most automatic of instinctive functions, should precede the frequency of the Ace of Diamonds, which represents the entire instinctive center. So, Russell created a second card diagram in which the card labels were on the oscillations rather than on the notes. One of the most remarkable aspects of this inner octave structure of 2, 6, 18, and 54 cards in 4 rows is that it is exactly duplicated when the card labels are moved from being on the notes to being at the centers of the oscillations of the oscillating does 2 scales down. This new arrangement is more accurate than the original card diagram because the simplest parts are now at the lowest frequencies, and they occur as harmonically stable spaces centered on the oscillating does. This new arrangement also groups the cards into pairs, dualities, which are bound together, and that provides a great deal of new information. Let's examine one of the essence centers first, which are the minor oscillations of does in scale 2. Because this drawing locates the notes to scale by frequency, it's clear that the minor oscillation of the Jack of Diamonds in scale 3, representing the simplest, most automatic part of the instinctive center, is now shown as fully complete and functioning. At the far, separating the oscillations in the far left graphic of scale 3, before the oscillation of the entire center, the Ace of Diamonds in scale 2 can even begin to function. In mammals, this part of the instinctive center must be complete at the moment of birth. The emotional part of the instinctive center, operating with drawn attention, the Queen of Diamonds, a major oscillation in scale 3, begins at the start of the entire center's oscillation, at the beginning of the green sine wave in the first scale 2 graphic of 3 octaves. The central frequency of the instinctive center, the Ace of Diamonds at the scale 2 do, directly below the Mi in scale 1, is not reached until the full range of the oscillating do of its emotional part is completed at the right end of the black arrow in scale 3. Now, the person has much more developed senses and has possibly become a discriminating wine taster. But control of an essence, or given center, is not achieved until the intellectual part, operating with directed attention, in this case the minor oscillation of the King of Diamonds, has completed its oscillation, which also completes the oscillation of the instinctive center itself. At the far, in scale 2, separating the major and minor oscillations. Note that the central frequency of the intellectual part is higher than the central frequency of the center as a whole, giving it control over the entire center. It takes a lot of effort to develop the directed attention part of a center. If a person has done that, she may be able to really slow her heartbeat or to ignore pain. Now, let's look at the parts of a major oscillation center, an acquired center, the Ace of Clubs, the moving center. The first thing to notice is that the Jack of Clubs is the major oscillation in a duality with the minor oscillation of the King of Diamonds. Thus, they are bound together. That is, the control of the instinctive center, given by developing at least some part of the King of Diamonds down in scale 4, is what leads to and makes intentional movement possible. It begins with the most automatic movements, represented by the Jack of Clubs. We can see, for instance, that only when an organism can control its chemistry on both its right and left sides can it have the freedom to move in either direction. The moving center, the major oscillation of the Ace of Clubs in scale 2, begins at the same frequency as its most mechanical part, the Jack, and its central frequency is not reached until the range of the oscillating do of the Jack is complete, at the right end of the black arrow of the second graphic, representing a set of 3 octaves in scale 3. The child has learned to tie his shoes or to play hopscotch. The completion of the oscillation of the Ace of Clubs is not reached until the minor oscillation of the Queen of Clubs, its emotional part, has completed its oscillation. The adult has now learned fine motor skills. Finally, the major oscillation of the King of Clubs, the intellectual part of the moving center, begins only after the oscillation of the Ace of Clubs is complete. It exerts control over the entire moving center. Acquiring the intellectual parts of centers requires a lot of effort. Think of a skilled athlete. The same arguments apply to the major and minor oscillations of the parts of centers. Let's see how this pattern applies to a very abbreviated and simplified chart of the evolution of life. We must now consider the scale 0 octave to be the entire octave of organic life on Earth, not just humanity. The very first moment of life begins with the 2 of diamonds, DNA, the molecule that could copy itself, in scale 4. As life became more complex, multicellular aquatic plants, like the algae, appeared. Then, more complex plants, like the mosses, which invaded the land and began to make the atmosphere oxygen-rich. As the Queen and King of Diamonds developed, there were plants with specialized tissues to move, absorb water, and seek light. Roots, stems, and leaves. The vascular plants, like ferns. The gymnosperms then developed naked seeds, like the redwoods. And finally, the flowering angiosperms developed, with seeds that included concentrated packets of carbohydrates, like sunflowers, which would soon make the spread of warm-blooded mammals possible. Some plants even developed moving parts to catch insects, like the Venus flytrap. This completed the evolution of the plant kingdom, represented by the Ace of Diamonds, the instinctive center of organic life. The development of the cell control chemistry at the 10 of Diamonds that allowed plants to seek light also made possible the development of moving single-celled animals, like protozoa, with flagella. It was the beginning of the moving center and animals. Soon, colonies of animal cells appeared. Then, multi-celled aquatic invertebrates with specialized tissues, like trilobites, and land invertebrates, like the earthworm. Because every organism has its own line of evolution, billions of lines of both animal and plant evolution continued to develop simultaneously, overlapping each other and co-evolving. Then came the insects and the vertebrates, starting with the first cold-blooded reptiles, then dinosaurs, and some reptiles that began to care for their eggs, like some snakes, or their young, like crocodiles. The development of the moving center is followed by a large gap in the chart, before the second set of 3 scale 2 inner octaves begins. According to this system, this gap was passed only with the aid of an assisting octave. In this case, the octave of astral energy, or the energy of the emotional center. With that assisting octave, animals began to develop caring for their young, again in service of the duplication principle. With more care, the survival rate of young animals increased substantially. As warm-blooded animals, like the birds, then mammals, like the kangaroo, began to thrive, bearing live young, social animals developed, and the three lower centers began to unify, to produce loyalty to the herd, the group. At the same time, the rudiments of the intellectual center began to form, as animals remembered the meaning their emotional centers had created, where they had found safe breeding grounds, successful places to forage, or successful migration paths. Birds flew in flocks. Wolves ran in packs. Elephants, chimps, and hominids lived in troops. The higher emotional center, conscience, came into being. An individual would sacrifice himself or herself for the benefit of the group. It is clear from the chart that the higher emotional center, represented by the extra joker in scale 1, first formed in social animals, and was formed by the unification of the already developed instinctive, moving, and emotional centers, the aces of diamonds, clubs, and hearts, directly below it in scale 2. This was as far as great nature could push evolution. Remember, from the original cards chart on the notes, that conscience is represented by the note La, which is as far as an octave can proceed without more outside help. See the bodies diagram in Chapter 5 in the Resources section of the website. But humans acquired the beginnings of reason by spillage and began to develop their intellectual center, starting with the Jack of Spades, our formatory mind, which operates with mechanical attention. Language developed, and the Queen of Spades, working with drawn attention, to create the intellectual center, the Ace of Spades. As the image expands to show the entire chart, we see another large gap. In this system, that gap can only be spanned with the aid of a second assisting octave beyond organic life, the higher mental octave. Through its action, humanity's third story of centers began to form. The higher emotional center, first formed in social animals in scale 1, stepped down to become a part of that upper story. That is, it assumed the place of the extra joker as the minor oscillation in the third set of 3 octaves in scale 2. The higher mental center, the joker, the major oscillation in the third set of octaves of scale 2, could then begin to form through the unification of the intellectual center, the Ace of Spades stepping down to scale 3, and the higher emotional center, the extra joker, also stepping down to scale 3 to form the first 2/3 of the higher mental center. With the first functioning of the higher mental center, humanity began to enter the octave of reason. But then, according to Gurdjieff, a disaster occurred, which he referred to as Atlantis sinking. The higher emotional center, conscience, ceased to develop in people because we had made the world so safe that our children no longer needed to adequately develop their lower 3 centers, required to form conscience. Without conscience, the higher mental center could no longer develop. Humanity fell asleep. But conscience remained as a buried possibility within us, and is still there, as the unclaimed birthright of every human being. In order to reclaim it, we must polish and unify the three lower centers, which is the purpose of the objective exercise. For this unification to happen, the opinionated Jack of Spades, the busy automatic mind, which dominates our intellectual center, must agree to step down and allow the three lower centers to unify, so that conscience can assume its higher position in the upper story. Later on, after the Queen of Spades is further developed and purified by conscience, the entire intellectual center must give up its biases and step down to scale 3 to become the impartial, mechanical part of the higher mental center, which is represented by the Joker in scale 2. And the higher emotional center, conscience, must also step down to scale 3 to become the emotional part, the compass, of the higher mental center in scale 2. Finally, these parts must step down yet again to become the mechanical and emotional parts of the higher mental center's intellectual part. These seeming deaths and rebirths are spoken of in many spiritual traditions. Only when the top 2 centers of function in scale 2 are fully developed has a human reached her or his full potential. The 2 oscillations of scale 1, the I, Joker, and the Am, extra Joker, are then fully alive. This would complete the octave of reason, encompassing the full set of 3 octaves in scale 1, or the single octave of a fully human being in scale 0, and extending from the note La to the note T in the scale unknown octave of organic life. This can only be accomplished through sustained, individual, intentional effort.